Hi guys, in this episode of Shri series, we're going to be solving quadratic equations using the quadratic function. Now, if you looked at my previous video, we looked at the quadratic formula, all right? And going back to how we derived it, we know very well the quadratic formula to work out x is going to be x is equal to negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. That expression has a square root over 2a. So that's the quadratic formula. And if you looked at my previous video, I showed you how we can derive the quadratic formula using the basic quadratic expression, which is y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. All right. So today I'm not going to talk about deriving that formula. We're now going to go into the exact questions here. All right, so the first question here is, we've got an expression, we've got a quadratic equation, x squared plus 5x plus 3 is equal to 0, and we want to find the two values of x. Just remember, when you get x squared, just remember here in this question, you will be required to get two values of x, all right? So the first thing we need to do is identify the value of a, b, and c. So if you look at it here, what I like to do is when students are solving questions, or when I'm solving these questions with students, I get them to align the quadratic expression, which is this one here. All right, so they can see what's the value of a, what's the value of b, what's the value of c. So you can see the value of a is 1, the value of b is 5, and the value of c is 3. All right, so in this question you can see the values of a, b, and c are all positive numbers, and that generally becomes easier to solve. In the next question, I'll show you where we have a combination of negative numbers, but for the time being, let's look at this question here. So you can see here, team, that the value of a is equal to 1, because if you don't have a number there, we assume that the coefficient of x squared is 1, the value of b is 5, and the value of c is 3. The next thing we need now to do is apply the quadratic equation formula. So in other words, in place of a, we're going to put 1, in place of b, we're going to put 5, and in place of c, we're going to put 3. So literally, we are going to substitute the values of a, b, and c in the quadratic formula. All right, so let's go through this step. So what we'll get is, we've got x is equal to negative b, that's negative 5, plus or minus b squared, which is 5 squared, minus 4, a is 1, and c is 3. All right, and that's going to be over, rub that out, over 2 times 1. So in other words, a is equal to 1. So literally what I've done is I've replaced a with 1, b as 5, c as 3 in the quadratic formula. So that's going to be negative 5 plus or minus b squared minus 4 times 1 times 3 over 2. All right. And what that becomes here is x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus 5 squared is 25 minus 4 times 1 times 3 is 12. All right. Over 2, because 2 times 1 is equal to 2. So basic multiplication techniques here. All right. So we now have literally two values of x. Okay. Now, if this was a non-calculator based exam, you would express the answers like this. I'm just going to put an asterisk just to show you. So that's going to be negative 5 plus root 13 over 2. So that's one value of x. So I'll just put 1 here. Or you will have another value of x, which is negative 5 minus root 13 over 2. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm saying that you leave your answers if this was a non-calculator section is, we know very well that 13 is not a perfect square. We can guesstimate, all right? We can approximate that, hey, the square root of 13 would be just a little bit less than 4, because we know very well the square root of 16 is 4. So if, let's say, in place of 13 we had 16, we would be able to solve this. But in this situation, we know very well that we leave it like this. So we have two values of x. We have negative 5 plus root 13 over 2 or negative 5 minus root 13 over 2. Only because you can see here, you'll have two values. There's a plus and a minus. All right. Now, suppose this was a calculator-based question. You would now use your calculator to work this out. So you will get two values of x. So that's going to be root 13. So 5 plus root 13 divided by 2, and that's going to be 4.30, or negative 5 minus root 13 divided by 2, which is negative 4.30. All right, so remember, like I mentioned before, when you're solving this equation using the quadratic formula poses one advantage, which is that you can get numbers that have a decimal place to it. So they are not whole numbers. All right. So when you use your calculator, you'll actually see it's not just 4.30, but it's 4.302775, and the number goes on. All right. So we've now got two values of x here, and you're welcome to clarify the answer by redoing the equation. All right, so you will see that when you put 4.30 as x in the original question, you will get 0. If you put negative 4.30 in the original equation, you will get 0. So I will leave that for you to work out. All right, so with that in mind, let's look at the ways in which we can solve another question. So before I move on, I'm just going to simply outline the steps again. The first thing we need to do is find the values of a, b, and c by putting the quadratic expression ax squared plus bx plus c for you to see what is a, b, and c. Now, just remember, when you're first starting, you can follow this procedure. Once you become used to it, you can mentally work out the values of a, b, and c. The next thing is substituting the value of a, b, and c in the quadratic formula. All right, and just be mindful, you will get two answers because you got a plus and a minus, and also because it's x squared, you will well and truly get two values of x in this equation. All right, so that's the first question that I wanted to work out with you guys. Like I said, it's a very challenging part when you're not too sure. All right. Let's move on to the next question here. Suppose we have the same. So we've got 2x squared minus 2x minus 1. So the first thing we need to do is find the values of a, b, and c. So you can see that a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 2, and c is equal to negative 1. So you can see in this question, we have some negative numbers in that. All right, so we're going to use the quadratic formula. It's always a good practice to write down the quadratic formula. So minus b, so x is equal to minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So we're now going to put the value of a, b, and c in this equation. So x is equal to minus b, and b is negative 2. So that's going to be negative 2. So watch out for that pitfall. A lot of students simply jump into conclusions and say negative 2. Just be mindful that the original formula had negative b. So in other words, it's going to be negative and negative 2. And when two negative numbers come together, they yield a positive number. All right. So you're going to put plus minus negative 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 1 over 2 times 2. All right. So I've put a as 2, b as negative 2, and c as negative 1. And the next thing we're now going to do is work out and simplify. So x is going to be equal to 2 plus minus 4, because negative 2 squared is 4. So one advantage is when you get b as negative, when you square it, you should know in your head that your final answer will be a positive number. Because when you square a negative number and a positive number, your final answer will be a positive number. And in this case here, just be mindful, you got negative 4 times 2 times negative 1. The two negatives now are there, so it's going to give you a positive number. So 4 times 2 is 8. All right, so that's going to be 8 over 4. So, like I mentioned before, if this was a non-calculator section, your answer would be left like this. X is equal to 2 plus or minus square root of 4 divided by 4, which would give you x is equal to 2 plus square root of 12 divided by 4, or 2 minus square root of 12 divided by 4. All right, so that's how you would leave your answers. Now you can even go a little bit further, and I know I may be digressing away, but going through a topic called surds, all right, where we can say, no, hang on, we've got square root of 12. We can express it as a surd, and that would now be x is equal to 2 plus 2 root 3 over 4. All right, and that would give you the answer in this point. So here as well, you could say, or 2 minus 2 root 3 over 4. Okay, and you can simplify this, and that's going to be 1 plus or minus root 3 over 2. Okay, so that would give you my final answer if I was to put that as a surd. All right, so let me just zoom this a little bit. That's how that would give you the answer. So it's really important to know how we work through these points, and again, trying to simplify this. Now, of course, if this was a non-calculator section, all right, you'd leave your answer like this. But if, let's say, this appeared in a calculator-based exam or a test, you can further simplify, and you would get two values. So 1 plus root 3 divided by 2, you're going to get 1.367. So I'll just rewrite that again. 1.367, or 1 minus root 3 divided by 2, which is negative 0.366, or negative 0.37. All right, so you can get two values of that if this was going here. All right, so my apologies for the zooming, but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of this question here. So that's how you work through these questions. Obviously, the difference with the second one is that you've got negative numbers, particularly B and C, and it's really, really important that you're well and truly aware. You're well and truly aware of how these questions can come. It can really confuse students, but it's important to know the combinations. Like, for example, when you get two negatives, that becomes a positive, and the negative and negative put together becomes a positive as well. So that's how we work through these quadratic equations. All right. Like I mentioned before, in this video, I wanted us to apply the quadratic formula to solve quadratic questions, and I also mentioned that the values of x's will not be whole numbers. You can use it for values of x which are whole numbers, but you do have the other methods which I've shown in the previous video. All right, thanks for listening, guys. Bye now.